Tommy's plan with CTT Oil and Cattle was never about building a clean, lasting corporation. That's the biggest misunderstanding surrounding CTT. On paper, it looked like a merger, an expansion, even a step toward legitimacy. In reality, CTT was a buffer, not a future. It was designed to absorb risk, hide instability, and buy time in an industry that was already collapsing under its own pressure. Tommy understood something from the beginning that others didn't. The oil business he operates in is no longer sustainable in the traditional sense. Deals are too fragile. Oversight is too aggressive. Margins are shrinking while liabilities grow. CTT wasn't meant to thrive. It was meant to contain damage. Oil and cattle weren't combined for innovation. They were combined for camouflage. Cattle land masks drilling activity, spreads liability, and complicates oversight. It's a shell layered over a shell. CTT worked because Tommy was the engine. He knew which rules could bend, which people could be leaned on, and which fires needed to be put out before anyone noticed smoke. The company didn't run on policy. It ran on Tommy's instincts. That's why it appeared functional. But that also meant it was incredibly fragile. Remove Tommy, and the entire structure loses cohesion. What makes Tommy's plan misunderstood is that it was never about growth. It was about delay. Delay consequences. Delay exposure. Delay collapse. Every move he made inside CTT was about buying one more season of survival. That's why so many of his decisions feel reckless to outsiders and necessary to him. He wasn't planning 5 years ahead. He was planning to get through the next crisis. This also explains why Cammy's vision never truly aligned with CTT. Cammy believed the company could evolve into something stable and respectable. Tommy knew that was a fantasy. You can't reform a structure that only exists because of compromise. The moment CTT tried to become clean, it would collapse under the weight of everything it was hiding. The Season 2 finale exposes this truth brutally. Once the explosion happens, CTT doesn't just lose assets, it loses credibility. Partners pull back. Rivals circle. Regulators see opportunity. What's left is a company that technically exists but has no pulse. That's why Cammy is left with what feels like a dead company going into Season 3. She inherits form without function. Tommy's real plan wasn't to save CTT forever. It was to outlast everyone else long enough to reposition his family and limit fallout. That's why Cooper's involvement matters. Tommy wasn't grooming Cooper to run CTT as a CEO. He was teaching him how to survive when structures fail. The lesson wasn't build this. It was know when things are about to break. CTT Oil and Cattle represents the last gasp of an old survival model. It's a system that only works when someone is willing to be morally flexible, constantly present, and personally exposed. Tommy was that person. Once he's gone, physically or functionally, the illusion disappears. That's the key takeaway. CTT wasn't a legacy. It was a shield. And shields don't get passed down, they crack under pressure. So when Landman talks about Tommy's plan, it's not about strategy in the traditional sense. It's about endurance in a dying system. Tommy didn't build CTT to last. He built it to burn slowly instead of all at once. And Season 3 isn't about fixing CTT. It's about what happens after everyone realizes it was already dead, and who's smart enough to walk away before it takes them down with it.